Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of UC Weekly News. I'm your host, David Danto, and I'm joined by my good friend and industry analyst, Kevin Kieller. Kevin, say hi to everybody.
Well, hello, everybody, and hello to you, David. Thank you for having me.
So we are the two people that are not in Barcelona this week and not going to ISE. But we have an interesting thing to talk about because the IMCCA, after Lord knows, 2020, I guess 4 years of the pandemic, a break, we are relaunching the Collaboration Week in-person events with Collaboration Week New York, February 20th to 22nd, which is less than a month from now, which is really interesting. I mean, we probably should have a 3-month ramp to get sponsors and get people registered, but we had an opportunity on the calendar to take it, so we jumped at it, and we'll do the best we can. It's going to be a great program. Starting at Cisco's offices, we're going to be talking about, the state of the industry and what's going on. And I'm going to sort of be the ambassador to host and get started with that, although we're going to get some special guests as well. And then later that evening, we're going to be talking about the current design of spaces. And that's going to take place at Planar's location. And all of this is at the website. I'll put that up on the screen right now. It's collaborationweekny.org. And the third venue, which at this point is probably going to be Microsoft's offices in Soho. I'm waiting for that to be confirmed because all the other sites are available for registration. That one isn't yet. It'll be as soon as we get the confirmation. Kevin, you are going to be our ambassador for that, and you're going to be talking about collaboration and AI, correct?
That is correct. No, and I'm super excited. Like, this event is very interesting because, as you said, you get to go around to different locations throughout New York that you may not have been to or got a chance to. So yeah, no, I'm really excited, and as well, collaboration in AI. I mean, what a great topic. Certainly, very topical and certainly relevant because I think people are trying now, especially in 2024, to sort out the hype of AI and figure out, okay, I got to start paying for this depending on what platform you're using. How am I going to get my money's worth? Am I going to get my money's worth? Who do I give this to, especially if I'm in a big organization? So lots of topics that I intend to drill down into. And I think, even though it's in the Microsoft offices, I mean, we'll certainly talk about Copilot, including the different flavors of a new flavor
Yeah,
of the
we need,
week.
we need to talk about that, but keep going.
Yeah, but we'll certainly talk about, what's also happening on the other platforms because, Zoom has their AI companion and WebEx has their AI personal assistant. And regardless of what platform you're on, a lot of, things are relevant to any platform and some are specific. But I think it's good to have an understanding of what's happening, especially as perhaps your organization is figuring out where to move with respect to some of these platforms.
Yeah, so I just got back from CES, as everybody knows who watches this show, because I've been doing like 19 CES updates, and we just put it to bed last with analysts. But one of the terms that my good friend Carolina Milanesi came up with was this idea of AI washing, where everybody's talking about that they have AI, whether they really have AI or not, and is it really AI or is it machine learning or is it just somebody grabbing a buzzword to be popular? So we are having a hard time in the industry figuring out what really is AI, whether or not it works, whether or not it's reliable, whether or not it's worth it, and what are the various offerings. So that's probably going to be topic number one, is to sort of break down the hype and explain what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'll likely say during this week, because I've said it in other presentations around AI, is it doesn't really matter if it's AI. What matters is, are you getting return for your investment? So whether it's AI, BI, CI, it really doesn't. It really doesn't matter. So, and I think that that's where sometimes people have gotten, caught up in some of the terminology because it's new and it's exciting. But 100%, like, I always think of it as like, now with AI added, for a while I think every food item had vitamin C. You were getting like 10,000 times your daily because it was easy to add, and so I think it's easy for vendors to say that they have AI because most software does smart things, and maybe people can't decide between that. But certainly, yeah, every product now has AI, whether or not it's valuable AI. I think that that's what organizations have to figure out through the balance of this year.
Okay, and you are one of the few Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Office 365 or Microsoft 365 experts that I have on the show every once in a while, and I do want you to help me figure out what happened from the hey, Copilot is generally available, but it's really only generally available if you have X billion
Yes.
licenses and this, and now there are different offerings, including one that's marked as a pro, which is under the other one. I'm totally confused. Can you help break it down for us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a little bit, I would say Microsoft like stumbled out of the gate. So back in November of 2023, they said Copilot is generally available, and they didn't put this, but it was just kidding. So you're right. It was generally available to organizations that are willing to make an annual commitment for 300 licenses, which ended up costing $108,000. And you had to have 300 people. So even if you're a big organization back in November, and you wanted to have 10 people play with it, that wasn't an option. What is very exciting is as of January 15th of 2024, now it is truly generally available, which means you can buy one license of Copilot. Now, the confusion is they also introduced this Copilot Pro. So let's break it down really quickly. There's Copilot that's free. That's part of the Bing chat. Everybody can use that. You can do a web search, and then you've got a chat in Bing, and you can ask questions and do fantastic things. That's for free. Then the next tier is Copilot Pro, which is available if you have a personal Office 365 or family Office 365 account. That is $20 per user per month. But what it doesn't give you is it doesn't give you the integration into all of the Microsoft 365 apps, right? You get with some, but not all, because it's confusing. But then Copilot, that is more targeted at the enterprise. So Copilot for Microsoft 365, that is the $30 per user per month offering. But don't be fooled, because you must make an annual commit. So it really, it's not like you can say, let's try it for a month, but you can now try it for one person. So for $360, you can put your credit card in and get Copilot. This gives you Copilot in Teams, Copilot in Excel and PowerPoint and Outlook. But even then, it's confusing, and I'll certainly talk about it during my Wednesday session, because it depends on what version. Sometimes you have to be using like the web version of Excel versus the desktop version, and so Copilot is evolving. But I would say if you figure out how to use it, you probably can get the $360 of value. But once again, you kind of have to understand, how to use it. And that's really what I'm going to talk about. And that applies across all of these AI tools. They're exciting, they're fun to try, but how are you going to derive the value from it? That's what we'll talk about.
Will you be able to do some actual demos of Copilot when you're presenting, or like playbacks or screen caps of demos?
Yeah, no, I absolutely will. And it's such a big topic, and I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, what are those best kind of concrete examples? And sometimes, as you say, I'll play back something because you don't want to wait even like the minute that it might take if it's a big thing. It's kind of boring to stand up there for a minute. But others, depending on as long as there's a decent Wi-Fi, which I assume there will be in the Microsoft Office, we can do some some actual examples.
And just to be on a tiny bit of a tangent, as long as you're here and as long as you're one of our resident Microsoft experts, is it my understanding that the Teams interface is about to permanently change for people that haven't flipped over? Is that something you're aware of?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. So, what's happening is you had that optional toggle, like since Enterprise Connect in 2023. So that was like March of 2023. They said, hey, everybody should flip this toggle and try the new Teams, or sometimes called Teams version 2.0. That was a bit early because when you flipped over, there was missing features. And so between March of 2023 and now, there's virtually all the features have been, ported over to this new version 2. So they re-architected it to be better, stronger, faster. I don't know, is able to jump tall buildings allegedly. Um, but really, by the end of March 2024, everybody's going to be, pushed over to that, and that's for another session. But that's important because even though they've brought over most of the features, there's some features, and some of the features that actually were, my favorites. Maybe not a lot of people used them. Their telemetry might have told them, but they have said, well, we're not going to bring that over into version 2.0, or we're going to do it, slightly differently, as Microsoft likes to do, just to keep us all on our toes. So
Keep us
that,
on
yeah,
our toes. Yes.
yes. But yeah, so we will all be doing the version 2, the new teams by the end of March of 2024.
Terrific. So, since your explanation on Copilot was so good, I figured I'd throw in that explanation so that, I don't care if anybody else cares. I cared. You're
There
teaching
you
me.
go.
So that's a good thing. Switching back to the AI discussion, very interesting thing happened to me yesterday, which I assume will be one of the topics that you cover when you go over AI, which is how to interact with AI to optimize its usage. A friend of mine asked me to help put together some courseware on using large language models.
Right.
So I figured, if I'm going to be doing a course or putting together materials on a course for how to use a large language model, wouldn't it make sense to go to the large language model and ask it, what would you do for a course? That should, even if I ignore it, that should at least be the first step. So I asked it for an agenda, and it produced a really awesome agenda. I had to tweak one or two things in there, but it was terrific. And then I copied it and I pasted it over to a Word document, and it came up as a single paragraph with no pagination. So, I could sit there for an hour and put carriage returns in, but I figured I would go back to, we're talking about ChatGPT here. I don't care. So I went back to it and I said, can you put carriage returns in after each one of the each one of the responses, each one of the lines in the previous response? It said, sure, no problem. And it produced it again. So I copied it and I pasted it into Word, and it was still a one big block of text. So then I went back to ChatGPT and said, can you reissue the response above with carriage returns that work for Microsoft Word?
Yes.
And it said, Microsoft Word. Okay, I can do that. And it did it again, and I pasted it over, and it was beautiful. So, it's interesting that you really need to be that specific as you're putting things together in order to get the right output. And the question that you would want to ask yourself, and this is a bad example, but at least it's illustrative, is in the time it took me to get the correct output for an agenda, which was, 15 items, would it have been faster for me to just type the agenda? And I don't know the answer to that question because I felt it was worth the exercise considering the subject matter. But that's something that we're all going to be facing, is if our interface with our AI assistant is going to take more time than doing the actual work ourselves, and we need to review it and edit it for accurateness, we're going to have to make that case each time whether or not the effort is worth it.
Yeah, so I think I love the example because I think it's illustrative of a couple of things. Three things pop into my head, and hopefully I'll remember by the time I go through them. So number one, I think this is one of the interesting things about Copilot for Microsoft 365 is if you are a Microsoft shop and if you're using Word and PowerPoint and Outlook, having the AI be in where you're doing the work or Teams, I think that that's going to make a fundamental difference as opposed to, of course, you can go to ChatGPT and cut and paste, and I've done exactly what you've said. So I have this belief that in the flow of work, when you can highlight a paragraph in Word and say, make this longer, shorter, more concise, it will eliminate some of those formatting challenges and issues because, it'll know where you're, kind of what the content, where it's going to sit. But I think the other thing that was fantastic in your example is that you thought to use, Chat GPT in this case to actually do the formatting. And it was funny because this morning somebody sent me something that was coming out of an Azure blob, and they said, well, it's unfortunate because the way it is, the formatting, it's hard to read. It was kind of a pseudo JSON format with extra, parentheses and curly brackets and whatever. And, I could have gone in manually, but I thought, hey, I'm just going to say, I just put it into Copilot. I put it into Copilot and I said, hey, can you make this be more human readable? And it came out with it. So every single day, I find an example where a colleague says, hey, I asked my AI, ChatGPT, to do something that I go, wow, that's a terrific idea, and I wouldn't have thought about it. So, the second point is I think we're going to learn from each other and from all these examples on how, like, this AI is like, it's like a Swiss Army knife that has 100 different tools in it, and every day you're figuring out, oh, I didn't know it had this kind of tool, right? And then the third thing to take away from your example is, even though you have these tools, sometimes it is better to do the brute force approach. Sometimes you can use some elegant tool and do something, but by the time you set up the tool and do it and whatever, to your point, there are things where we're going to find out that it's not the tool's fault. I mean, I got a lot of tools in my toolbox, but sometimes you just take a hammer and beat on something. That gets you to end the job a lot faster. I think we're going to have to figure out, everything is not, hey, let's have AI do this, right? And we will learn some interesting things that we didn't think we could do with AI, that we can do with AI. And we will learn some things where it's not worth the trouble. And hopefully, over the next handful of months, then we'll also figure out, okay, and for what roles inside an organization is the benefit exceed, kind of just the fun, and therefore we'll know how to license this effectively, right?
Awesome. And the second part of the venue sessions that you're going to be at is going to be a panel discussion. We don't have our panelists yet, or at least we can't announce them, but I'm hoping that we're going to get some real rich stories about here's what I've tried and here's how it worked and here's how it didn't. Because, the whole goal in our collaboration space and in every technical space is learning from each other. This is going to be, as you point out, a year of learning from each other. So I'm glad you're making the trip. By the way, it's a corridor that I travel frequently. It takes more time to go through customs and immigration on both sides than it does for
Yes.
the flight to go from Toronto to New York City. It's a relatively easy trip. And you'll be coming down and being at that session. It'll probably be a little bit of the next one too, where we're going to talk about the gadgets that we saw at CES and ISE, including, hopefully Greg Harper will have his Apple Vision Pros, and he'll have his the Rabbit thing that was
Yes,
ordered,
yes.
and some of these other new tools, and we can all look at them. And it'll be great to have you here and break some bread and go over this with the New York crowd. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I think that this kind of this collaboration week, it's a perfect, kind of in-person type of event. So it's super exciting that, yeah, I at the beginning you did the date math and it's 4 years. I mean, all that pandemic time, it's hard to calculate, right? Because it seems, both longer and shorter depending on how you look at it, right? So, but no, I'm super excited that it's coming back, and really glad to be part of this.
Thank you, Kevin. So one more time, if somebody wants to reach out to you and get information from you, maybe work with you as an expert, how can they get you?
Yeah, Kevin Kieller on LinkedIn, or is probably the best place, and you can see what I've done and see my recent posts, some of which are not surprisingly on AI.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Kevin. Look forward to seeing you in person next month. And again, the website we're talking about right over here, it's collaborationweekny.org, one word. Look at it, look at the events, look at the people we have speaking, and it's growing every day. Sign up, register. You have to register for each venue separately. The reason you have to do that is because each venue has a different capacity. So, if you're registered for one that holds 80 and then there's another one that holds 50, if you don't register quickly, you may get closed out. So make sure you do that as soon as you can. Thanks very much for watching every week. As always, we will see you next week. Thanks a lot.